Hello. Oh. Hello. Welcome to another night of BFP Radio. Tonight we'll be talking to John Fleming, the author of a well-known book called Fearsome Creatures of Florida. Right now we're experiencing some minor technical difficulties, so I'm operating the switchboard right now due to an emergency situation, and my internet is very, very scanty in my apartment. But on the phone I have with me tonight is, I'll let you guys do your intros.
I am Tim, also known as King Gray. I'm King Sasquatch, also known as Jeremy.
Okay, and right now oh my gosh. Out of all the times my internet chooses to freeze, it's picking now. Isn't that great?
So, Nick, while we have a couple minutes before we wait for John to call in, do you have any sort of paranormal news, Nick?
I didn't even press that. I pressed that like 10 minutes. Oh shoot! Somebody's calling. Hello? 661. You're on the air.
Hey, it's me. It's Brent.
Hey, what's up, Brent?
Oh, hey, Brent. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, right now our switch. Me and Tim are getting a camcorder. We're driving home, so Nick's running the switchboard right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. But
waiting for Jess to call in.
Yeah, as far as paranormal news, I actually don't have any quite now at this moment, but I can pull some up really quick. I know today's gonna sound kind of half-assed, but everybody, but like I said, due to the fact that Jer and Tim are kind of on the run and they were held up at the store, I had to take the reins in an emergency situation, so it's gonna seem kind of half-assed, but I'm gonna try to put it together as best as we can. Oh gosh,
you're doing
website.
I have some paranormal news. To add.
What?
So I was reading an article. There was another MUFON UFO sighting in Wisconsin yesterday. It said there's a little girl, I forget her name. She said she witnessed a giant mothership again, with sending more orbs of light down to the cornfield, and it was like absorbing energy again, and they flew it back into the mothership. So in your opinion, do you think it's going to be providing energy for the mothership, maybe?
Yeah, it definitely could be. What do you say? It swallowed up a cow? What? Did I hear you correctly?
Oh yeah, because said it was like there were little orbs of light. Like remember last week I had a similar news topic. There was another one.
Yeah.
They were sending like light into which was maybe a probe or something, but it was sending into like the cornfields, and it looked like electricity was coming from these things. Like as they were gathering energy, and fly back up into the mothership, and it would like provide it with possible energy.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, actually, I do. I'll go ahead, Jared.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say I actually have an article. I have an article right here that's talking about the school I used to go to, Ashland University. They're actually looks like they're having a Ghost Watch 2010. Will be put on by metaphysics students in Jeff Teal's class in the Hawkins Conard Student Center Auditorium. Apparently they're going to be talking about ghosts at my old university that I went to before I transferred to the one I go to now. I can read the full. Yeah, I'll read a little bit more just to give more of a text. 3 weeks of paranormal research.
Nick, what do you think about all that, Brent?
About what?
About Nick's news story that he was reading.
Oh, I thought that was pretty cool, you know. Like, is that in the your old school?
Yeah, well, I was gonna read more of it to provide more of a context until our guest calls in. It says 3 weeks of paranormal research was enough to make 2 Ashland University students switch on some extra lights at night. For the past month, sophomore Tara Mumia and Ryan Marks have scoured the library in search of information discussing demons and exorcisms. The topics will be discussed at 4 p.m. Tuesday during Ghost Watch 2010, which will be put on by metaphysics students in the Associate Professor Jeff Teal's class. The public event will take place in the Hawkins Conard Student Center Auditorium. Topics include apparitions, spiritualism, alien abductions, near-death experiences, esoteric knowledge, and remote viewing with special application to espionage. Mamiya explained the difference between a ghost and a demon. A ghost is the soul of a person who has died, Mamiya said. A demon is a fallen angel. Satan was a fallen angel, and demons are the angels that followed him. A demon tries to possess people to make people to turn evil like them. Marx said people who are involved with cults or who become open to the paranormal through mechanisms such as a Ouija board are more susceptible to being possessed. What we did was try to find the real-life stories, Marx said. I think people need to know that this kind of thing is real, and these people may not be crazy. Junior Doug Jessup studied remote viewing, which he explained is the ability to gather information about a distant or unseen target using paranormal means or extrasensory perception. A remote viewer is expected to give information without an object that is hidden from the physical view. Oh, we have a caller. 813, you're on the air.
Hey, it's John.
Oh, how you doing, John?
Hey,
hello,
man,
John.
How are you? How you guys doing tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, doing pretty good. We're having a fun situation. My co-host got tied up doing some errands, so I usually don't take over the switchboard, but I had to take over today, and it may seem kind of half-assed today, but we've been making good so far. But I'm glad to have you finally on here so we can talk about your book and the knowledge you can provide.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on.
No,
well, what does Bigfoot's Pad look like?
Well, our logo from... Oh, go ahead, guys.
Well,
what's the look like?
Would you like? Well, what Bigfoot's Pad is it's our organization. We're a paranormal research team where we go and look for like cryptozoology, spiritual stuff, aliens, all sorts of things like that. And what we do is we have a weekly radio show where we interview people and have shows on paranormal topics, and we thought that you would be a great guest for this week's show.
Well, that's great. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, I'll say, would you like to talk a little bit about your book, Fearsome Creatures of Florida, and your background?
Yeah, well, I come to it, I always had kind of an interest in cryptozoology and paranormal things when I was growing up, and I read books on the Bermuda Triangle, even though I wasn't living in Florida at the time, and I always had an interest in Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all the cryptozoological favorites, and then I came back to it as approaching it from a writer. I teach creative writing at the University of South Florida, and so I write novels and stories, and the way I ended up writing this book is I came across a book published in 1910 called Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, which a few years ago when I started this book was not available widely, but now you can get it on Google Books and read it online for free. But anyway, I had to order it from the UC Berkeley Library, and I ended up holding in my hands the first edition signed by the illustrator of that. Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods is a collection of stories of cryptozoological creatures that the lumberjacks would report on that they'd find out in the woods when they were cutting trees. And so there's some really fantastic creatures there, including the one that first drew my attention to the book called the squonk, which is a creature that is so ugly that when you see it, it melts into tears and disappears. And a student of mine brought that to my attention because I used a story in my class called The Tears of Squonk by Glenn David Gould, which is about an elephant that is trained to murder people. And anyway, this student had heard the name Squonk before from a Steely Dan song. And the term squonk comes from that Steely Dan song, Any Major Dude. But anyway, I looked that up and found that there was also a link to where it came from originally, which was Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods. So anyway, when I get hold of the Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, I knew I had to do something similar. And, I'd always been interested in legendary and mythological creatures and read about them as a kid and even as an adult. So I wanted to do something similar to that about Florida, which I've lived in on and off for a while now. Florida's just a really interesting place for creatures. You have alligators here, which you don't in most other parts of the country, and you have pythons roaming the Everglades, and you have big iguanas cruising around, and so you have not only the native species, but almost any exotic tropical creature can survive here, especially in South Florida. So there are strange creatures cropping up all over the place, and it's Florida, even though it's most of Florida has been overrun with development and golf courses and all that stuff, there's still like big pockets of wilderness where you really expect to find anything. And, of course, Florida's known for its skunk ape, which is Florida's version of the Bigfoot, and El Chupacabra. There have been lots of El Chupacabra reports here, and other creatures throughout history. And so my first idea was to just sort of collect these legendary creatures and then write my own thing about them. But then as I started getting into it, I made up some of my own. So some of the stories in the book are based on actual legendary creatures, and some are just ones that I made up myself.
Well, I know that in your book you talk about the skunk ape. I know we've had other guests on the show and done our own research that have talked about skunk apes, and we've never actually talked to somebody that lived in the area. I was just wondering, do you know a lot about the skunk ape sightings in Florida?
When I researched the book, I did research that a little bit, and there's a guy down off Tamiami Trail that does, bordering on the Everglades, that does has a skunk ape research center, and we'll take you on tours. I haven't done that yet. But you get sightings every now and then. I'm up in Tampa, and a lot of the skunk ape sightings are around the area known as the Big Cypress Swamp, which borders on the Everglades, but it's less watery. There's lots of forested area and plains that a skunk ape could hide in. So you get sightings down there every once in a while. I haven't heard of any recently. There's another thing in Tampa we can talk about in a minute, but the skunk ape, is not supposed to be quite as big as the Bigfoot, and the main thing about it is its smell. Anyone who has an encounter with a skunk ape, or even just thinks one is nearby with noises or the scent, really comments on the smell. It's supposed to stink for miles. So that was, in my piece on the skunk ape, I focused on the smell, and I called the skunk ape the artist of stink.
Oh, with the skunk ape, what do people commonly say that the smell smells like from your research?
Well, I can tell you what. I can tell you how I write it in the book. Hang on a sec.
All right, what did you write in the book?
I wrote, like a dog that ain't been bathed in a year and suddenly gets rained on. That's how one witness describes the smell. And others, less generous, claim it's more like the unclean cage of an elephant with intestinal trouble, or the county dump after a methane explosion has scattered its ripe innards, or a bubbling witch's vat of garlic, excrement, and putrefying fish. The thing stinks.
So, would you say that from what you've researched, do you think that the skunk ape could live in the Florida Everglades area of Florida?
Well, as much as a Bigfoot could live in the Pacific Northwest. There's the area is not as big as that, but there's plenty of wilderness there. The Everglades be difficult for a skunk ape to get around in the waters of the Everglades. I don't think they're known to do that, but in the Big Cypress swamp area, there's 100,000 acres where anything could hide if it really wanted to.
Mr. Fleming, I just wanted to ask you a question. Are you familiar with the Jimply-coot?
No. What is that?
It's a creature that resides in the southeast region. It is described as a weird combination of a ghostly dinosaur, an incredible dragon or lizard, supposed to walk the roads at night, grab travelers by the throat and suck their blood.
Nice.
Sounds like a really bad version of the La Chupacabra, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I've got this other one in the book called The Ghost of the Monkey Knot. And that one, the monkey knots, NASA sent up before they actually sent up humans in the early rockets, and ran tests on them. So one of these monkeys, Gordo, was sent up. It didn't orbit, but it was just sent up into space for a very brief period, and they never recovered his capsule. So in my piece, he actually washes ashore, and it's unclear whether he's actually the real thing or a ghost. And he haunts the coast near Cape Canaveral, kind of looking for his the fame that's been denied him. But I bring that up because recently there's I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there's a mystery monkey in Tampa Bay that they say it's a rhesus monkey. But it appears like one day on the Tampa side of the bay and another day on the St. Pete side of the bay. And there's the last few months, there's been these sightings all around Tampa Bay of this monkey that's just foraging through people's backyards and then takes off. So anyway, my theory is that is actually the ghost of Gordo the monkey knot. Still roaming the state.
So would you say that it's a ghost of a single creature? Or would you say that it's multiple creatures?
Well, I don't know. They used a lot of those. Monkeys in the early NASA tests, and they weren't. They were trained to go up in the rocket, and then when they came back to Earth, they were either disposed of or sent to the monkey old folks home. And I imagine that monkeys are not too happy about that. So. It's possible that all of those monkeys are still haunting Florida looking for the fame that they deserve and never got. They had to watch, if they got access to TV, they had to watch those ticker tape parades of all the astronauts coming back. And they had to be thinking, what about me?
Yeah, definitely.
That's true.
Oh, Mr. Fleming,
I was going to say, what do you think about it, Brett?
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, of course they're going to want their fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Fleming, I was reading through a review of your book, and it says you talk about a giant python that swallowed an alligator. I don't know if anybody else has seen pictures of that, but I have. Would you like to care to share some more information about that?
Yeah. If you guys want, I can read you the piece from the book.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely. We'd be honored.
Okay. It's just a few pages long. This one's called The Glades Python. And yeah, this one there's a famous photo of this that made the news a few years back. Okay, The Glades Python. It made the national news. 13-foot Burmese python tries to eat 6-foot alligator, explodes. Pictures at 11. A huge belly-up python split like a roll paper tube when an undead gator kicked its way out. Other than a change in the mosaic pattern, the python's belly like a dot matrix printout, the gator's a primitive set of rectangular tiles. The one looks like a natural extension of the other. It's a coiled mystery, a reptilian time machine, a glimpse surprising to some of the Darwinian struggles alive and well in the Florida glades. How could it happen here, today, just beyond the condos and golf courses and practically in our own backyards? I'll tell you. It begins like this. A boy craves a pet and dreams big. No garter snake for him, nor a boa since half his 5th grade class already owns one. No, if he really wants to earn his classmates' respect, he must have a snake that can grow to 20 feet, one that can suck down pet Easter bunnies as quick as a trip to the flea market. A Burmese python fits the bill. His parents indulge him. They answer a classified and bring him a fork-tongued pal named Phineas, who stares through the glass like someone just stole his food. For a time, the boy basks in the notoriety of his storybook pet. New friends line up out the door to watch the Saturday afternoon feedings when a live rat tunnels head first to its death. But when the snake reaches 8 feet, the boy's parents begin to wonder if they shouldn't have just bought him a shrunken head, a thing just as frightening but with the advantage of being dead. This snake is alive and it's growing. How easily now it could strangle the boy's younger sister, and soon the boy himself. Already the boy has felt his ribs creak like old wood when Phineas squeezes him playfully around the middle, and his karate lessons offer no defense. The snake has graduated from merely exotic, a label that implies a strange thing tamed, a caged bit of otherness. Now the aura of danger has become danger itself. When the thing measures 10 feet, Dad and 2 friends load the cage into the bed of a pickup and drive it into the Everglades, where it would seem to pose no threat to anyone or to anyone's dogs and cats. But in the wet, rich glades, the thing thrives. It is no longer a dangerous pet and no longer an exotic stranger. It is right at home. It feasts on otters, rats, turtles, and endangered wood storks. It finds others of its kind, former pets, and it breeds. Slithering quickly up the food chain, it soon comes face to face with the American alligator. Who will swallow whom? When both reach a certain size, it's a simple matter of surprise and strategy. As the picture showed, even an apparent victory can end in mutual defeat, yet the python nearly succeeded. And there are plenty more, adapting so well you have to wonder if this is where they belonged all these millions of years, a kind of Ophidian promised land. Bruce Lee said, "When 2 fighters of equal strength, speed, and skill are matched, he who is master of the feint will win." Who can doubt that the python, the adaptable newcomer, will be first to master the feint? And once the alligators have been suffocated and swallowed whole, where will the 20-foot python go to satisfy its insatiable hunger for big, slow-moving sun worshippers? It will follow the line of pickups back from the Everglades. It will sinuate through the ficus hedges between neat rows of backyard pools, and there, with the patience of a creature whose evolutionary rewards come once every million years, it will wait. So that's the glade python.
So
Interesting.
The python. So these pythons, are these a common thing? Like a common?
Yes, they've become very common. It's obviously a non-native species in Florida, and really just started as people's pets that have been let go. And the Everglades seems like a good place to let them go, so people dump them there. And it's also a perfect place for them to thrive. So they eat up the native species, of plenty of endangered birds and other animals there. And now they've gotten so big, as that picture showed, you know, you get 20-foot, 25-foot pythons in the Everglades, and they can eat gators. And what happened with that picture, there was a research team flying over the Everglades, and they saw something down there and landed their helicopter and got out and took pictures of this just amazing thing. The snake had tried to eat this alligator. It was a big 6-foot gator, and either the alligator somehow clawed its way out, or or the python died trying to eat it, and its belly burst open, but the snake is split in the middle, and there's an alligator coming out of the middle of the snake. It was an amazing thing.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, definitely.
They've declared open season on the pythons now in the Everglades. You have to have a permit, but you can go in there and kill as many pythons as you want.
So
yeah,
if you guys
definitely. Are looking for something to do for summer vacation, come on down and get you some pythons. They might be good eating boots.
Well, one thing I would like to ask was, we're getting a question right now. They're talking about a chapter about a hanging tree that comes to life or something like that in your book.
Yeah, well, that's not a traditional sort of cryptozoological creature, but it's a tree I've got in the book that has been used for hanging, because Florida, like a lot of states in the South, has a history of lynchings, and you might not realize it because you expect the lynchings to be in Mississippi and Alabama and so on, but Florida in the early 20th century was like the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan. And there were a lot of lynchings in North Florida, so there were a lot of old oak trees that may have been lynching trees, and there were some horrific events that went on there, and they not only lynched people, but they would tell them that we're going to take your picture, and they actually did this. They took pictures of the black guys that they lynched, and then they sold them as postcards after the lynching.
Wow.
So in my piece about it, there's a guy who just is looking for a peaceful resting place under a tree, sits on a little swing under the tree, and then the tree has this history to it. So it actually, the guy closes his eyes and sort of drifts off to sleep. The tree starts to grab him and remind him of its history right around the neck.
Wow, that's really
I know
neat.
that there's a couple of people right now that are writing us. They're asking us, could you just elaborate a little bit on the chupacabra sightings that are in Florida that you know of, or your research?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of chupacabra sightings in the 90s, especially. That was like a big thing around Miami, and the chupacabra, the original sightings were in Latin America and the islands, and then it started turning up, just like an immigrant from one of those places to around Miami, and so farmers around Miami and people who just lived in the suburbs and kept small animals would find their animals with their eyes eaten out and their blood drained, and then they would find traces of hair from what they thought was chupacabra and things like that. So there have been sightings, and then just recently in a county east of here, there was a sighting. It was actually on the news, on the local news. Some family found some hairless-looking dog creatures in their backyard, and they shot one. There were two of them, but it was a black-skinned creature with no hair, and I don't think it had killed one of their pets, but it was foraging around their backyard for something. And they kept the thing and then showed it to the news cameras, and the news people went and got some expert who said it was actually a rare variety of South American hairless dog. But the people who caught it didn't believe it. They're like, I ain't never seen no dog like that before. So they went to go shoot. They went to go look for the other one to shoot it too, but they never found it. So I don't know what they've done with the thing, if they put it in the freezer or what, but somebody should study it more, see what it really is.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. Fleming, I read that in your book you talk about the key deer. Could you give us some info about that?
Yeah, well, the key deer are little miniature-sized deer that live in the Florida Keys. And there's like a key deer preserve down there on your way to Key West. You know, to get to, I don't know if you guys have ever been down there, but there's just a long highway that island hops out into the Caribbean until you get to Key West. So you're basically in the middle of what feels like the ocean with little spits of land every few miles. And the key deer arrived there probably during the last ice age, when they could walk out there on the Long Peninsula, and then got stranded there. And so my piece is about connects them to the tourists who get stranded in the Keys when there's a hurricane coming. And even though the key deer are on this little preserve, and they're small and they're cute and people just want to cuddle with them, when the hurricane comes through, they get really vicious. And so they are tired of being hunted, as they have been in the past, and run over by cars, and being coddled in their mini environment. So they want to stop the people from getting out just the way they've been stopped from getting out of their little habitat. So they block the road, and there's only one road that goes down through the Keys. And as a hurricane approaches, they will block the road and prevent you from escaping. And so as the winds pick up, they will actually dump your car, like it's sort of a group dynamic, the way penguins protect themselves from the cold. You know, they protect themselves from the wind, and then they shove your car into the waters. And there's a famous story of some World War I veterans that were building the railway down through the Keys to Key West, and in the great hurricane that hit in, let's see, when was that, 30, I'll have to check that. Here we go. Labor Day hurricane of 1935, which was still the most powerful hurricane to hit the United States. That came and washed out the tracks, and they tried to get a train down there to get the men out who were working on it, but they were washed into the sea too. And my theory is that the key deer were connected with that too. They wouldn't let the men out.
How about a question that was coming in I would like to ask was, your website says that there's black panthers, like were-panthers, over in Florida. I was wondering, could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. The were-panthers, the Florida panther is an extremely endangered species. There are maybe 100 left in the entire state. And it's because they need a huge area to roam. You know, their turf is large, and with all the development in Florida, their area's just been sucked up, and they can't live in small spaces. So there's not many of them left. And then in the 70s, I think, that there was a program to bring in some of the cougar from Texas to breed with them. Because part of the problem is with the panthers, it's such a small population has become inbred, and they find mutant panthers all the time. So the were-panther is either a result of that crossbreeding program with the Texas panther, with Texas cougars, or it's a result of the very small genetic variety and causing mutations. And the were-panther there's only one that actually exists, and it can only reproduce itself by colliding with a human traveling at least 75 miles per hour. So what happens is you're driving across Tamiami Trail late at night, you cross into the south part of Florida through the Everglades, and it's dark, and a werepanther can come out of nowhere and it will just pounce through your windshield and sort of merge with the human there, killing the human, but also turning it into a werepanther. So that's how it reproduces.
Wow, interesting. So did it originally start as some sort of legend, or?
Yeah, that one may be a Native American legend from down there. A werepanther, like, you know, there's were cougars out west and all sorts of transformative creatures like that.
That's what because I know that there's a Native American legend called the Skinwalkers, and they're shape-shifting creatures, and they turn into wolves and coyotes and things like that too, which I thought it was kind of interesting that you were saying that these wolves could merge with people, and like, I guess that's what you call would be merging with people. I don't know, what do you think, Nick? Does that sound similar to Skinwalker, like similar to that?
Yeah, it sounds very similar to that. Just, one thing that could be possible is either there is truth to the paranormal occurrences, or maybe the story originated off in some place in North America, and then when the tribes, split apart, they each brought a different version of that story with them. But there's definitely a lot of similarities with that.
Yeah, well, the Seminoles are the splinter tribe that came into Florida fairly late, so they may have brought those legends with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are other legends, Native American legends too. Like I have one piece on the Mangrove Man, which is based on a Seminole legend of they call them the Mangrove People or the Sand People, that used to identify as giants or mysterious, shadowy people lurking in the mangroves. Well, in my piece, the Mangrove Man is a creature that it's shape-shifted into a mangrove, and if it's disturbed in its natural environment, it can suck the blood out of the person who gets caught up in the mangrove roots. Because the mangrove roots are like those prop roots that stick out. They look like long fingers. They look like something that could jab you and suck your blood. And so the Mangrove Man and like the environmental issues in Florida, the coastal issues center around keeping these mangroves, because they provide mangroves. They provide breeding grounds for fish and a whole lot of other creatures. So there's like always a big push to protect the mangroves. And so everyone wants to leave the mangroves alone. All the environmentalists want you to leave the mangroves alone. And so it's all about, the piece is all about a creature that wants to be left alone, and if you disturb it, it will stab you and suck your blood.
I have a question about the Okeechobee flat whale. Am I saying that right? Okeechobee flat whale?
Okeechobee, yeah.
Okeechobee flat whale, yeah.
Yeah, Okeechobee is, I should say about the Mangrove Man, I have an animation of that on the website. If anybody wants to go to the website, fearsomecreatures.com. I have that. That's like the opening page of the website. I had a friend do an animation of each of the creatures, and that's the opening page. And then if you go to my blog, there's some other animations in there. I keep posting them every once in a while. But the Okeechobee flat whale, yeah, the Lake Okeechobee is a huge inland lake in Florida, in the center of Florida, and it's a very shallow lake. It's also had, like a lot of Florida, it's environmental problems because the agricultural runoff goes into the lake. And when they dammed the lake back in the 30s, after a couple of hurricanes had washed over the banks and killed thousands of people because of the flooding from the lake, they put up a big dike around the lake. So when they did that, the lake, they protected the surrounding areas from flooding and opened them up to farmlands. So there's a lot of farms now around the lake. But the problem is when they did that, a couple of things. First of all, the problems they're having now with the Everglades are partly as a result of that, because the water that flowed really slowly through the Everglades came off of Lake Okeechobee and other parts around there, and it gradually kind of flowed through and filtered out the Everglades. So that current is not slowly flowing through the Everglades anymore. And the other problem is that all the agricultural runoff that does go into the lake has nowhere else to go anymore. So it's like a really nitrogen-rich environment. And that's caused problems with like breeding of fish and so on. And also we've had drought problems in Florida in recent years, and so the lake level has really gotten shallow. It's usually only like 15 feet in the deepest parts, and a lot of it's only just a few feet deep. So the Okeechobee flat whale is this huge creature that lives in Lake Okeechobee, but because of the shape of the lake, it's got to be it's like a giant flounder, that sort of shape. But it does breathe oxygen, and so when it comes up like a whale, why they call it the flat whale, it comes up once a day for air. It takes in one huge breath, and creates a kind of a hurricane around it, like a whirlwind that sucks in everything around it. So I actually have an animation of that one too. There's a guy out on the boat on Lake Okeechobee, and this creature surfaces for air and sucks his boat down into its lungs. So that's what the flat whale's about.
Oh, okay.
Another potential mutant creature in Florida.
Well, from what your research, from your own experiences, does it seem like most of the cryptids or cryptozoological creatures that are in Florida, does it seem like they're mostly near the Everglades or any certain portions of the state?
Yeah, because that's where large chunks of wilderness still are. You know, like the center of South Florida is one of the areas that hasn't been developed that much because they've tried. There's a long history of Florida of them trying to actually drain the Everglades so they could build on it. You know, if they'd succeeded in doing that, now there would be golf courses from Gulf to Atlantic Ocean. But there's not, because they tried so many times to actually drain the Everglades and cut canals through there, and people were given government permits to go in there and do whatever it took to drain that land, and they never could. So that's all still wilderness, a large part of the center of the state in South Florida. But there's still wildernesses up in the panhandle of Florida too. I have one creature called the peat fairies, and that's based on a legend of the Waukulla volcano, which is Waukulla is an area up in the panhandle of Florida. And for a long time in the late 19th, early 20th century, I can't remember the dates, but when people were who were living in that area and would pass by on boats, would see smoke, trails of smoke rising from the inland, and no one could ever figure out where that smoke was coming from. So they called it the Waukulla volcano. Well, it couldn't really be a volcano because there's no volcanic activity in Florida. But people went on expeditions to find it, you know, and there were all sorts of theories about witches' covens back there and all sorts of strange creatures that might be living there. And there's the one expedition, somebody from, I don't know, it was the New York Times, it was somebody from up east, led an expedition to try to go find it, and they never got to where the area was because it was such a forbidding swamp. You know, they would see gators and they would see snakes, and I think somebody got bit by a snake and had to be carried out of there. And then it was like just a dense, swampy jungle back there, and they couldn't even get to where they thought the smoke was coming from. So that remained a mystery for a long time. And other people thought it was a peat bog back there that was smoking or letting off methane gas, and that was catching on fire somehow. So my piece is about these peat fairies that are from that area, and they're sort of little symbols of mysteries that can't be solved, and teardrop-shaped creatures with chimneys, sort of chimneys on their heads, and so they get together in these circles like they're hippies in a commune or something, and puffing out of their bongs or something because the smoke is pouring out of their heads, and they do a little dance. And so anyway, the piece is all about, when a mystery is, there's still mysteries around, and when you try to discover one, you really don't eliminate a mystery. You just sort of scatter it. And these little things have scattered around the state, and you can still find them, like out in the woods somewhere behind somebody's trailer as you're driving down the road if you pull off and take a look yourself.
Well, in regards to the peat fairies, do you know if there's any researchers or any sort of books that are written on just the peat fairies, or if they're widely known?
No, I have not seen any books on that. There are websites you can go to about the Waukulla volcano. That's spelled Wakulla, and you get some information on that. And several websites will come up with all sorts of theories about it, but nobody's gotten to the bottom of it. There's no definitive theory of what those things were.
So was it only like a one-time thing, or was it like a legend of like sightings and things like that, where there's been like a whole bunch of sightings?
Well, what happened with the Waukulla volcanoes, there was one year where it just disappeared, and the smoke started coming from that area, and it was right about a time where there was an earthquake, which I think was up in South Carolina or something, but it made lakes disappear because it, shifted the ground in just a certain way, and they suspect that because there was a lake that really disappeared and went underground as a result of this earthquake. And there's another lake in Florida that has done that in the past too, not as a result of an earthquake, but it just does it every once in a while because of sinkholes underneath it. So they at the time they thought, okay, well, if this can happen with the lake, then something washed out this volcano, and so we don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's how they sort of gave up on that mystery. But my piece says, well, whatever was there probably didn't disappear and just moved on to somewhere else.
Well, another question that I would like to say is, or I don't know if it's more of a statement or a question, it's coming from somebody on our MySpace. They're asking us, in your book, how many creatures in your book would you say are either not widely discussed or creatures that you're one of the first authors to write about?
I would say a lot of them. I started out with the more famous legendary creatures like the skunk ape and El Chupacabra, and then started doing research, through cryptozoological sites, and I would just research a certain area. I'm familiar enough with Florida, driven around enough, and lived here long enough that I know the areas where there would be creatures hiding out. So I would research certain areas, like that Waukulla volcano. I just stumbled upon that, and then I would get little bits of information I could find and write a piece about it. There's up near that Waukulla volcano area. There's another piece just to show you that they're not all in South Florida. There's a piece about the St. Vincent sandbar. The St. Vincent Island is an island off the coast of the Panhandle that was, it's now I think now it's a state park with almost no facilities on it. But back in the 20s and then again in the 50s, it was privately owned, and somebody wanted to make it to an exotic game preserve. So they brought in, zebras and elands and all sorts of game that they could hunt there with their rich pals, and the only exotic creature that has survived there is the sambar, which is a really large Asian deer that's known for its sort of screeching honk when it gets scared. So my piece is about the St. Vincent sandbar and how they ended up, how they were once hunted but now have learned, after living on the island for a long time, to hunt people. So if you go out there and you can camp there, you can get a primitive campsite, but you have to be aware of the St. Vincent sandbar. So there's a lot of creatures like that are, based on little bits of anecdotes from Florida history.
Well, something that I would like. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was going to say, I was just pulled up a quick excerpt from the Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, and I found this interesting-looking creature called the Snalligaster. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the book a bunch of times. I can't remember which one that is, though. What does that one do?
It is a giant alligator, it's a giant alligator-like creature with a spike on its back that impales people and is supposed to eat them after impaling them on its spike on its back.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah, see that one. I don't know if that one is from the woods or not, because the Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, most of them are from the northern woods, but then there's some others, I think, like that, and maybe I can't remember that, like the Hodad, some other creatures like that may not be from up there, maybe from other parts of the country.
Do you have about 8 minutes left in the show?
What's that? Oh, okay.
Let's see, we had about 8 minutes left in the show, and then I was just going to say, right now we actually had a question concerning the peat fairies. They were saying, so do you think that if you were going to go look for one of these creatures, they were saying, where would you suggest that you would go to look for one of these creatures?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one because there aren't many sightings of them. I think you have to just go out. You have to cross the center of the state in Florida. The way Florida has been developed, it's the coasts that have the high population areas, and then still a lot of the roads crossing the state are these little two-lane roads that just cut through middles of nowhere, like large prairie areas and heavily wooded areas and swampy areas and the Everglades. And so if you're going to find anything like the peat fairies in Florida, you've got to take these two-lane back roads crossing the state at dusk or at night and just keep your eyes open and be ready to stop. Because most of the people just blow through these. Would you say that
going by the volcano? Would you say setting up surveillance by that volcano somewhere in that general area might be a... Yeah,
well, I don't know. The volcano's not smoking anymore, so I don't know if there were creatures there. They've probably moved on. They've probably gone somewhere else. And that area's gotten more developed. It was really a dense area of swamp before, but now there's a lodge up there, and there's tourists can go canoeing down the rivers and so on. So that's not quite as mysterious as it used to be.
And a question that we're also being asked now is... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that's what I find is so interesting and great about cryptozoological studies is because, a lot of the mysteries that, when the country was unsettled have been paved over and developed and so on. And so, but these little pockets of areas where we still want to believe that something can exist that we don't know about. So, I think it's a wonderful thing that people are going to hunt for Bigfoot and any other creatures they can find.
Well, another question I was wondering was, what is a storm devil?
Oh, storm devil, that's really about the storms in Florida, because Florida is known for its big storms and not just the hurricanes. But, when we get into the summer season here, which is going to happen in another month or so, we get huge thunderstorms pretty much every afternoon that just blow through here and you feel like your house is going to get swept away, and then 2 hours later the sun is shining and it's 85 degrees again, and not a cloud in the sky. So that piece is about the storm devils are about these animals that increase in size and ferocity depending on the size of the storm that passes through. So, you know, a storm devil can look like your average everyday squirrel or raccoon that's hanging, foraging around your house. And then one of these storms will blow through, and depending on the intensity of the storm, that raccoon could grow to, 6 feet. And in a hurricane, the thing could grow to 15, 20 feet. It could be munching on your house. And then after the storm is over, you go outside to look at the damage, and there's no telling if the pieces of your house that are gone are from the hurricane or from one of these storm devils that have been chewing on your house.
Anna, do you have any anything to elaborate on that, Brent?
Well, what kind of creature, like, is it just a normal raccoon, or is it just something like a raccoon?
Well, it looks very much like a raccoon, and you probably could not tell the difference unless there was a storm.
Okay.
So it's something like the key deer, in that when the storm comes, it gets a lot more ferocious, and these things actually grow in size.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have 3 minutes remaining on the show.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, we have 3 minutes remaining on the show, Mr. Fleming, and I was just going to say, is there anything you want to say, any websites, any information on how to obtain your book, just any last words you'd like to say?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I do have a website. It's fearsomecreatures.com. And as I say, I've got an animation there of the Mangrove Man at the landing page. And then you click on, there are a number of, there's a lot of information about the book there, and there's some links. And then in the top right corner of that page, there's a way there's a button to click that takes you to the publisher to buy the book from the publisher. And you can also get the book through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anything like that. So, yeah, the book's been out about a year now, and I'm still going around doing readings and book signings every once in a while. So I appreciate you guys having me on and helping me get the word out.
Well, definitely. No, thank you for coming on our show tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure
thanks
thing.
again, Don.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You guys take care, all right?
You too. Thank you. All right, take care. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Ha ha.